Localist candidate disqualified from Leung election. Hail reported in Taipo. And for the first time, the Zika virus is spreading on the US mainland.
Good evening. Chan Ho-tin of the Hong Kong National Party has become the first hopeful to be barred from running in the Legislative Council elections. The government says the nomination of a candidate in the New Territories West geographical constituency was ruled invalid for failure to comply with a section of the Legislative Council ordinance. Chan Ho-tin is a convener of the Hong Kong National Party, which was established earlier this year. The party wants to fight for Hong Kong independence. Chan earlier applied to be a candidate in the New Territories West geographical constituency in the upcoming LegCo elections. He was asked by a returning officer on whether he supports Hong Kong independence. In response, Chan said the officer has no legal right to question a candidate's political stance, so he refused to answer. This afternoon, Chan announced on social media that he has been disqualified from the elections. He said the Electoral Affairs Commission quoted Article 1 of the Basic Law. It states that the HKSAR is an inalienable part of the People's Republic of China. In a statement, the government says the returning officer for New Territories West decided that the nomination of a candidate was invalid because he did not comply with a section of the Legislative Council ordinance. It requires candidates to uphold the Basic Law and pledge allegiance to the SAR. Chan says he's unhappy with today's announcement and may seek a legal challenge, such as a judicial review. There are 21 lists in the New Territories West constituency. They are headed by Chang Han Pan, Ho Kwan Yew, Wong Chun Kit, Frederick Fong, Chow Wing Kan, Michael Tian, Leung Che Chung, Wong Yun Tat, Eddie Chu, Kwok Ka Ki, Alice Mack, Andrew Wang, Wong Ho Ming, Lee Chut Yang, Tong Wing Chi, Clarice Chung, Ko Chi Fai, Jen Chung Tai, Hisujiko Nakade, Hendrik Lui, and Kwong Kun Wang.
Well, the police have expressed public security concerns about a new popular augmented reality game. The force made it clear it will implement necessary measures to help maintain order. Rachel Leung has the story.
Places like shopping malls and parks have become hotspots for those trying to catch their Pokemon. Some children are even joining their parents on the adventure. But there have already been many complaints that players are too caught up with the game and bump into people. There have been hunting tips online telling players where to find and capture Pokemon around town. Here, many people were seen gathered at Victoria Park. There are also calls for players to travel in groups and capture virtual creatures together. But that has sparked concerns from the police force. Director of Operations Lau Yip-shing said today the force will carefully assess the situation. He said officers will be deployed to prevent any possible chaos or clashes. The police also urged players to notify them ahead of time if they are planning to get together to play the game. And authorities will continue to caution them to be aware of their surroundings. Meanwhile, Secretary for Food and Health Ko Weng-man warned against people from playing inside hospitals, saying it may affect services for patients. He said the hospital authority has told the game's developer to stop placing Pokemon at hospitals and nearby areas. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
The Secretary for Security today refused to confirm reports that a North Korean student had sought asylum at the South Korean consulate in Hong Kong. There have also been reports police have stepped up security around the consulate in Admiralty. Lai Tong-kwok did say the city is still very safe.
I would not comment on the operations of our police force, but I can assure everybody that Hong Kong is a very safe city.
Hail was reported in Taipo this afternoon as Hong Kong was hit by unstable weather. And a tropical storm is moving towards us. The observatory says it may consider issuing the standby signal number 1 tomorrow. Rachel Leung again.
Taipo residents reported hail today. They said it was raining at the time when hailstones as big as coins fell from the sky. This man said it lasted for about 2 to 3 minutes. The Hong Kong Observatory said the hail was brought along by unstable weather caused by the tropical storm moving towards the South China coast. It said there were also thunderstorms in some parts of the new territories. Unstable weather is expected to continue in the next few days.
The tropical cyclone will enter the northeastern part of the South China Sea, coming within 800 kilometers of Hong Kong on Monday morning. The Hong Kong Observatory will consider issuing the standby signal number 1 on Sunday night at the earliest.
The observatory added it will continue to be very hot with a few showers on Monday. The weather will deteriorate significantly starting Tuesday. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
Turning overseas now, health officials in the United States are reporting the first cases of local transmission of the Zika virus that's linked to birth defects. Authorities in the state of Florida say 4 people have been infected in the city of Miami in a long-feared turn for the epidemic that's sweeping South and Latin America. Alan Buckner reports.
The 4 cases, involving 3 men and 1 woman, are believed to have contracted the virus within a small area of several blocks in North Miami.
It's almost inevitable that we're going to see local transmission of Zika because we have the mosquitoes, it's summer, and we have a lot of travel-related cases.
This is what we expected. Based on what we know now, it appears that that transmission occurred in early July, and after that point, the local health department did aggressive mosquito control in that area.
While the testing of almost 20,000 mosquitoes in a state lab has found none carrying Zika, travel-related infection has been ruled out. Efforts to limit the spread of mosquitoes have been underway, and Florida's governor says those efforts will now be stepped up.
I am directing the Department of Health to immediately begin contracting with commercial pest control companies to increase spraying and mosquito abatement efforts in the impacted area.
While the Zika virus is relatively mild for most people, its greatest risk is posed by infection in pregnant women. It can cause microcephaly in babies, a condition defined by a small head that can cause developmental problems. The current outbreak was first detected in Brazil last year and quickly spread through the Americas. Still, officials in the U.S. don't expect widespread outbreaks because of better sanitation and mosquito control.
Given the conditions of our country as a broad nation, it is unlikely that, for a number of reasons, that we're going to have the same sort of disseminated outbreak that they have in Brazil or in Puerto Rico.
U.S. officials say there's no reason to change travel plans, but are advising people to take precautions, such as using mosquito repellent, wearing long sleeves, and staying indoors to avoid mosquito bites. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
A Syrian maternity hospital in a rebel-held area of Idlib province was hit by an airstrike that killed at least 2 people. The hospital, the only maternity facility for about 110 kilometers, was extensively damaged. It's unclear who carried out the airstrikes. The charity group Save the Children, which supports the hospital, says at least half a dozen others were injured, mostly people waiting outside.
We have underground floor, so all the medical staff, they went to the ground floor. So none of the medical staff, they got serious injuries except for 1 midwife who was doing one delivery at that time. But for the people who were standing outside of the hospitals, they are just normal people. They were waiting, they are women who are delivering in the hospital. So the 2 people died. They were waiting a woman who's doing a delivery inside the hospital.
Elsewhere in the region, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has condemned Western countries for failing to show solidarity with his country over the recent failed coup attempt. It comes as the Turkish leader announced he's withdrawing all lawsuits against people charged with insulting him in a show of his goodwill. Having launched what critics call a ruthless counterattack against his enemies and those suspected of organising a coup to depose him, Erdogan is trying to show his softer side. Last night he said he was withdrawing all lawsuits filed against people for insulting him. The Turkish leader says the gesture is to diffuse tension in the wake of the failed coup earlier this month that saw hundreds of people killed and thousands of military officers, academics, journalists and members of the judiciary purged. Erdogan also stepped up his condemnation of the United States and European nations. He accuses them of failing to support Turkey while it was gripped by its most serious political crisis in decades. Perhaps reflective of the paranoia gripping Ankara, there have been suggestions that outside forces supported by Washington had a hand in the coup. Turkey's president had earlier singled out the head of the US Central Command, accusing him of supporting the coup plotters. US General Joseph Votel said on Thursday that the jailing of some Turkish military leaders could damage cooperation between the Turkish and American militaries. Others have also weighed in on Turkey's crackdown, with the US State Department expressing concern at the curbs being imposed on press freedom.
We have concerns when any country makes a move to close down media outlets and restrict this universal value. We expect Turkish authorities to uphold their assurances that the Turkish government will protect the rule of law and fundamental freedoms.
Others say the crackdown hurt the campaign against Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. The director of the US National Intelligence, James Clapper, said Turkey's purge eliminated officers who have been working with their American colleagues in the battle against the militant group.
And still ahead in the news. A family tragedy in Chunwan. Brazil's former president to stand trial. And second round action in the year's final major tournament.